football fans? Welcome to the Onside Kick. Ricky Widmer here along with only Dave Oster today. It's a rare sight. Usually I say only Mark Weber, but today, only Dave Oster.
Trick's on you guys. I actually showed up this time.
Mark
on the other hand, a little busy. He's got a nice date with the Mormon hottie.
Yeah, he's got a Mormon hottie from work. He's like, I'm going to work a little bit, then go on a nice date.
Yeah.
I'm going to ditch the podcast tonight, guys.
Be free, man. Live your dreams.
But we've got a great show lined up for you guys. We're going to be talking a lot of 49ers in this podcast as Kaepernick gets a new deal. Vernon Davis saying that Jimmy Graham should be... I wonder why he's saying Jimmy Graham should be paid like a wide receiver, Dave.
Maybe some ulterior motive in there.
And then finally, we're going to be like, if the draft can't be in NYC, where should it be? But we're going to start with Colin Kaepernick. 6-year deal, $110 million. He is now the 12th richest quarterback. And the first thing I see is maybe he should have waited for this, because then he would have, instead of being behind Phillip Rivers, he could be in the $20 million, like his buddies Joe Flacco and Drew Brees if he wins a Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. But he has been in position these past couple years. He's taken his team deep into the playoffs. You got to think money, maybe he's doing this now, gets out of the way. He doesn't have the pressure on his back. He does have that bonus $2 million if he wins a Super Bowl.
See, and that's the thing I just don't get, because some of the names above him, the 11 quarterbacks above him, some of the names that come out to me, Phillip Rivers, Matthew Stafford, Jay Cutler, Tony Romo, these are quarterbacks that are getting paid more than you. They haven't been to a Super Bowl. You have.
Yeah. No.
Kaepernick's been to a Super Bowl, even though he lost to Ray Lewis.
Wow. Single-handedly to Ray Lewis.
God wanted Ray Lewis to win that Super Bowl.
I can't argue with you. That's the truth, and nobody can justify that. But I agree. It's a bit, wondering why is he getting this kind of money. And honestly, I think it's just the time. It's all timing. Jay Cutler, Tony Romo cashed in at the right time for each of their teams. I feel like Kaepernick maybe he's not trying to break the bank. He's like, I want to be one of the top paid players, but to a limit, I don't need to cripple my team so they have to dump salary. They can't pay other guys around me. I mean, he's not going Tom Brady and just being like, yeah, we're going to loophole this system.
But, I mean, the one thing that in the ESPN article when he broke this deal, one of the things they say is he requested specifically that the 49ers have the flexibility to negotiate extensions with other players, and one of the players he said he wants them to negotiate with is his favorite target, Michael Crabtree.
Yeah, it's a huge thing. I mean, when you have a reputation built up, camaraderie between these two guys, you want to keep them around. I don't want to be too much of a homer, but it's kind of like that relationship Jay Cutler, Brandon Marshall share, where they spent a couple years together.
And look at both of them got locked up too.
Exactly, and I think that's what he's hoping for. He's like, look, Crabtree makes me better. I make him better. Everybody wins on this team.
According to ESPN, they said a source. This is the exact question that he asked the San Francisco Brass. So this structure gives us room to try extensions with teammates, right? He was told yes.
Exactly.
He was told yes, it does. But, I mean, with Kaepernick, and this is one of the things with this deal, you're going to get these questions, and especially you're going to get it from ESPN. You look at the article on ESPN. The question right next to it, is Colin Kaepernick an elite quarterback? And I see that word and I go, really? We're going to start throwing the E word out there?
Yeah,
the E word?
It's a bit early to throw that word out there. He has only been out for a couple of seasons. I think it's a bit early. And without a ring, obviously, you'd have to do something amazing.
But he's been there.
Hasn't finished the race.
No, you can't. And I bet you anybody on that Niners team would tell you that they would have rather won that Super Bowl instead of being the losers. Or, like I know Mark's a fan of this. He said this with us watching the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
He said if he's watching his team, rather lose in the NFC Championship than lose in the Super Bowl.
See, I don't know. That's tough. I mean, you want to see more success for your team, obviously, but it's got to be one of the biggest letdowns. Plus, I think if you lose in the championship game, not the actual... I'm sorry, if you lose in the NFC championship game as opposed to the Super Bowl, you can still pull that, what if card. You still got an excuse in your back pocket to throw it when people challenge your team.
Yep.
So
or if we were in the Super Bowl, we would have we would have beat them. If you're the team that beats you loses, or
Exactly.
you can say, oh well, we lost to the champion.
Nobody was going to beat them. Yeah,
no one was going to beat them this year, and that's what Niners fans could have said last year. And this is the thing, and I'm going to throw this out about the 49ers because Dave, I've talked to you numerous times this week. I'm starting to try to formulate my Super Bowl prediction.
Okay. A bit early maybe, but...
It's early, but I'm just thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I've come across the Niners as a potential team to predict to go to the Super Bowl. I know that this year's Super Bowl is going to be in their home court, their home field, you could say. Chances that Kaepernick leads them to a Super Bowl in their own stadium.
Pretty good. This is a team that is getting better. And it's hard to believe because of how well they've played the last 2 years. But they keep adding talent in the right positions. They've got stockpiles of guys who they got to draft low or pick up on the cheap to bring in to help supplement their team. I think they're making all the right moves on paper. It just comes down to performing in those critical situations where they just came up short a couple times.
Well, and one of the things I think of with the 49ers is it's great that Colin Kaepernick gets this deal. He's going to be – the offense is basically set. If they can –
I've got a question for you on this.
Go ahead.
On his deal, I mean, getting back to the meat and bones of it.
Yes.
How worried are you regarding his play style and how much money they've just invested into him?
I'm not worried that much because I know that with Kaepernick, we haven't had a huge sampling size.
Right.
We're I look at the Bears with Cutler or the Cowboys with Romo.
He's not going to play.
They had more years to kind of look at it and go, okay, what you see is what you get.
Right.
We basically have 2.5 years. Not even. Maybe maybe exactly 2 compared over the last 3 seasons of games of Colin Kaepernick actually playing. He hasn't had a big injury history.
Right.
So I wouldn't be that concerned. What I would be looking at is if I'm a quarterback just a little bit north of San Francisco in the same division, a guy in Russell Wilson who could be looking for some payday soon.
Well, I mean, you absolutely have to think that Russell Wilson, obviously winning the Super Bowl, would be paid more than this Colin Kaepernick deal. And again, he's similar play style. I feel like Kaepernick runs with a little more confidence, a little more speed, but Russell Wilson has the better arm. So I feel more confident in giving Russell Wilson the big contract, not only because of the ring, even if they were dead even, neither one of them had rings, I would be more confident to give Russell Wilson that contract purely because of how smart he is with the ball. He's elusive. He reminds me of greased up deaf guy.
Well, you say
he's untouchable.
You say elusive, and I only think because Mark has said it week in and week out when we talk about Russell Wilson is he says he looks like an idiot running around the backfield, running in circles.
Yep.
But to me, I look at that and I go, wow, what a genius.
He's buying time for his team. I mean, I would hate him if I was an offensive lineman because I'm blocking left. I'm blocking. Where the heck did you go?
But, I mean, with Kaepernick, it's not let me run around and buy time. It's, okay, shoot, I don't have anyone open. I'm just going to try to get yards with my legs.
He's going to blow past you. He has some ridiculous speed when he turns on the jets. And the one thing, he's got great vision. Downfield, he almost seems like a natural ball carrier. When he just tucks the ball and goes, you see the eyes moving. He's always looking for that open path. But the fact that he's always looking for that open path downfield versus extending time to get the ball downfield, you have to wonder how many more risks is he going to take.
And what I see with the Niners is right now looking offensively, because obviously Kaepernick's a quarterback. If you can lock up Crabtree, you already have guys like Bolden, Crabtree, Davis.
Stevie Johnson,
the new addition. You have the passing game, I would say, locked up, Pat. The one question mark on this offense, the run game. Frank Gore's getting older. Can maybe 49ers drafted Carlos Hyde?
They've got a stable of backs
who
are waiting
State
to prove themselves.
Running back. They have Lattimore. Can he come back from his knee injury?
Knee injuries.
And they also have Kendall Hunter, who's kind of been
big.
He's kind of been the, everyone has seen him as the guy in waiting to take over Gore's slot. He kind of reminds me of
Ben Tate, who he's, you're stuck behind this stud of a running back. You're give me a little, just a little glance of playing time, a little sunlight, keep him with some hope. And I'm wondering do they really have that confidence in him? They've gone out and gotten running backs year after year. So I kind of think they're going to end up going with a stable of backs, depending on Frank Gore's health this year, and maybe leaning him down on the touches, try to determine which one of these guys is going to be the heir to the throne.
Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at these stats now last season, and Kendall Hunter in 2013, 78 rushing attempts, 358 yards, 3 touchdowns. His longest was 45, averaged about 4.6 a carry.
Yeah. The guy's not a speedster. He's a big guy, and I'm a little surprised that he doesn't have more touchdowns, I'll be honest.
And then you compare that to Gore, who obviously 175, over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns. And you look at the touchdown numbers, both of them are in single digits. So it looks like to me if anyone's going to be scoring on the ground, it's going to be across the board, Kaepernick, Hunter, or Gore. Throwing, though, is where the Niners are going to get most of their touchdowns, unless I'm wrong.
I mean, you'd have to bet that they're going to try to leverage themselves more towards the throwing game to keep Kaepernick, I don't want to say happy, but you gotta be like, okay, it's not fun handing the ball off all day. I mean, there's no doubt Frank Gore is a stud. You got the group of backs we just talked about who are trying to prove themselves. But you go out and make an addition like Stevie Johnson, who has not been on great teams in the past. He's been in a little low point in his career. But he's a guy who can absolutely make plays. You've got Anquan Bolden still. You've got Crabtree out there. You've got your big tight end. So
we're gonna get to
I'm
Vernon
looking for them to
Davis.
turn it up a notch as far as the passing game this year.
See, and I look at in the passing game with the running backs, I look at Carlos Hyde because, of course, he did most of his work last year at the Ohio State University, over 1,500 rushing yards, 15 touchdowns on the ground. His last 2 years at OSU, he had 16 and 15 rushing touchdowns. But in his 16 receptions last year, in his last year in Columbus, 16 receptions, 147 yards, 3 touchdowns. A guy who can get it done receiving out of the backfield.
See, I'd like to see some more receptions out of the backfield there. It seems like low numbers, and maybe that's just Ohio's offense.
Well, and you got to understand, and this is the one thing I feel like where Carlos Hyde fits in a little bit better with the 49ers, especially with Kaepernick.
Mm-hmm.
Kaepernick and Braxton Miller, very similar, except I would, just going off of my memory without the research, I would say Miller looks like a bigger quarterback, and I'm using air quotes.
Bulkier,
there.
maybe, yeah.
Whereas Kaepernick probably has a little bit more speed.
Too. Yeah,
but both of them can run.
Kaepernick's
similar
well sized too.
quarterbacks.
I mean, he's not a small guy. It's just size wise, I think muscle and whatnot. Maybe a little fat, but I agree with you. They're similar quarterbacks, but again, it's Ohio offense maybe wasn't built around doing short passes, swing passes out to the running back, and that's something like Baylor. You'd expect the running backs to have tons of receiving yards. That Baylor offense no.
And
they did not throw to running backs.
I'm looking last season at Hyde's receiving stats. Only 3 games where he had more than 1 reception. His highest was 4 receptions last year in that 40-30 win over Northwestern, where he had 4 receptions, 38 yards, 9.5 yards per catch.
Right. And then there's always the stat that isn't a stat. It's how well does your running back block for your quarterback? Because that's invaluable. I mean, there's guys who, oh my God, he's a straight stud, but he can't block for shit. Your quarterback's going to hate him, so we can't leave him in the game. He's a liability. And that's the question is, Frank Gore, fantastic blocker. Kendall Hunter, great blocker. Lattimore, Hyde, we don't know yet.
And that's the one thing is it's stupid kind of to say that any of these 3 backs, I'm saying Lattimore, Hyde, and Hunter, none of them are going to overtake Gore.
No, not
in this
year.
season. But what if Gore gets injured again?
Yeah.
Gore's had injury history.
Yeah, they can definitely stable up, and I'm sure somebody will come out with a clear lead.
But let's move on to, we've been avoiding him for the most part. Let's get to him. Vernon Davis comes out and says that Jimmy Graham of the Saints should be paid like a wide receiver. And you kind of look at this and you go, oh, Vernon, I wonder why you're saying this. Maybe because you're looking for a contract extension of your own?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Want to get some big money?
I'm just trying to stick up for my fellow tight end wide receiver crossovers.
His exact comments, according to ESPN, were, I think Jimmy Graham is trying to make an informed decision as far as his contract. He believes that he deserves more, and I believe that he deserves more.
Yeah, it is an interesting state we're in at this point in the NFL where wide receiver tight ends, like these combos, like Jimmy Graham, lesser Vernon Davis, Aaron Hernandez was, Rob Gronkowski's being used as, and even Eric Ebron just came into the league. He's more of that physical athlete. He's got the speed of a wide receiver, but the body of a tight end. These guys are hybrids. They're not going to be the blocking tight ends out there who you stick at the end of the offensive line. He's going to lock you out and help your running back get a couple yards. That's not their job. Their job is to go out there, make ridiculous catches, be a mismatch for that defense, and get you easy yards and just be able to lob the ball up there in the corner of the end zone sometimes.
Well, and I kind of go back to what you said about running backs. I feel like in this day and age, it's kind of the blocking schemes have gone more from we're going to keep the tight end to block to we're going to use our running back to block and send our athlete wide receiver / tight end out there to catch balls. Yeah,
it's because... Okay, think about this from a coaching perspective or matchup perspective, as it may be. We've got a running back who's maybe 6 foot, maybe 5'10", and that range is about the average, anywhere between those two. Smaller guy, and you're gonna have him go out wide, and they're gonna be matched up with either outside linebacker or a safety or possibly a corner if you're a nickel. And they're about the same size. They might have, obviously linebackers could be a little bit bigger than him. The corner's about the same size, actually. Maybe even a little smaller. Otherwise, you can go ahead and throw out a 6'4+, gigantic target who's going to get matched up against, obviously, an outside linebacker, or even if they're crazy, single against the corner. And there's no way these guys... Speed versus height. No, they don't have them both. Otherwise, they wouldn't be playing the defensive side of ball.
Well, and I'm looking right now at the tight ends that we've seen last year have success. Obviously, Graham and Davis are up there. You mentioned Gronkowski.
Yep.
Julius Thomas.
Thomas.
Especially when you have Peyton Manning throwing to you.
You get the Peyton Manning asterisk right there.
But still, Greg Olsen.
Olsen was the number one.
Even when he was in Chicago, used more as a receiver than a blocker.
Absolutely.
And then... I would even throw, you got Jordan Cameron. I would even throw Jason Witten into that category.
Cameron started to have a breakout year last year.
Until Hoyer got injured.
Yeah, things happen. Quarterbacks, Browns, we're sorry.
And this is the thing I think of, and I only think about it because I was scrolling through the ESPN fan comments at the bottom of the article. And there's this one comment that just strikes me.
Yep.
Ben Majors, positions are irrelevant. How about you pay him like a guy who averaged 90 catches and over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns over the past 3 seasons?
It's a valid point, but I think if you start removing, descriptions or categorizing these players, then you're going to have a lot of, I don't want to say hurt feelings, but be like, well, you put up great stats, but quarterbacks are more important, so you get less money. We're already saying that, I guess.
Yeah, but we're already seeing, we saw with Kaepernick, the Bradys, the players are starting to be like,
Kaepernick puts up running back stats.
Yeah, and
so does Michael Vick. Does that mean they get paid quarterback salary plus running back salary?
I'm not even talking. I'm talking about he even, like we just said about Kaepernick. He said, "Let me take less money so we can get
exactly."
I think quarterbacks
you can't be paid off of stats.
Quarterbacks are starting to see okay, there's a lot more that comes into just giving me my money.
I don't want. Yeah. It's more...
them rings are more important than that.
I think that comes later on in careers, or maybe earlier if you're a wiser, it's all priority. I feel like early on they're like, I can get my rings eventually. I'm going to make bank now.
Because to me, when you talk about, let's just say Jimmy Graham, because that's who Davis was talking about.
Yep.
When you talk to me about, is he a tight end? Is he a wide receiver? There's only one world that matters in, and it's the fantasy world. Because then it's like, well, if you're going to list him as a wide receiver, I can put him in the wide receiver slot. And then, wait, I have Vernon Davis. I can play Graham and Davis, wide receiver, tight end.
Oh, my God. That would shake things up a bit. Absolutely. But in fantasy game, I'll be honest, it is impacting way more than it should be, it seems. Even from a fan perspective, you're always like, well, I want my team to win, but I've got the tight end on the other team.
Well,
I need him to put up at least a touchdown in like 70 yards.
And I mean, how this whole conversation of and it all starts with Jimmy Graham because he's the first one to come out and say I should be paid like a wide receiver.
Yeah.
It's affecting the fantasy game because now more and more leagues are saying, well, what's the point of having a tight end spot? We'll just have 2 wide receiver, 2 flex. So you can have the choice.
You know what? I'd be okay with it. I'll take 2 wide receiver, 2 flex any day of the week. Because that way, if you don't
then you could put a running back or a tight end in there.
If you don't get one of those top 5 receiving tight ends, no big deal.
Wide receiver, running back.
Exactly. You
And
don't have to worry about it.
See, but I don't know. When it comes down to the bottom of the argument,
Yep.
I feel like you shouldn't pay a player because of the position he played. And the only reason why we're talking about this is because of I'm going to say the diva aspect that you get from wide receivers. The wide receiver is the diva position of the football world.
Usually, yes. I typically agree with you. I mean, I'd say
trying to
Michael
think.
Irving.
Michael
Really?
Irving.
You're naming the wrong side of the Cowboys
I'm looking
team
at
there.
the defense. I'm thinking
Yeah.
of I'd ask Detroit for so
prime
much
time
money.
is the essential
Yeah.
diva. Like, it's him.
I'd ask for so much money they have to put me on layaway.
Yeah. But, no, I mean, good God, Michael Irving. But Jerry Rice was, like, the last, like, classy, like, number 1 wide receiver. You had guys like Randy Moss.
Yep.
I mean, Jesus. Well, I mean, Terrell Owens.
Good
Good God.
And I would let me throw this out there because he's looking for a contract in his own. Would you count Des Bryant as a diva wide receiver?
You know what? When he first came into the league, yes. But at this point, I think the Cowboys have locked him up pretty well. He's been very quiet. I'm all for him being just... No, he's no longer a diva in my mind.
Steve Smith, diva wide receiver?
No, he's past his prime at this point.
Ocho. We forgot Ocho Cinco.
Jesus. The Hall of Fame jacket, Ocho Cinco.
The Hall of Fame diva for the wide receiver. Who's more of a diva, Ocho Cinco or Irvin? Michael Irvin.
I mean...
This is getting back now. This is going back to the history
Michael
books.
Irvin had access to, like, Twitter, I'd have to imagine Michael Irvin. But I got to give it to Ocho. I mean, the stunts, the touchdown dances, celebrations. Yeah, it's Ocho.
But getting back to the Jimmy Graham argument, let me ask you this to kind of put it on just the final point.
Okay.
If you're sitting there, Saints or as just a general observer outside, are you going to pay Jimmy Graham wide receiver money, or are you going to be like, yeah, we'll look at a little bit of your stats, a little bit of what you do on the team, and go from it that way?
I would say he gets above... he's more than number 1 tight end money, but I don't know if I would put him in, like, top 5 wide receiver money. I'd put him, like, somewhere in between the two. I know the pay difference isn't massive, but I think he definitely needs to be somewhere, because he is somewhere in between the two. Obviously, the tight end money is capped a little bit lower, and it's not an actual cap. It's just a owner's cap, a general manager, like wherever they decide that line should be. It's a little bit lower than wide receivers, I'm sure. So we need to bring that gap a little closer, and he's the perfect guy to bridge it.
Well, and my point was made, I'm just going to say it again, is I think that positions are stupid and that we should pay on stats and what you do on the field, because why should I pay you because you play like a wide receiver? It doesn't matter what your role should be. It should be what we're paying you and what we're going to get out of you. And even the one thing I just think about, because with World Cup season coming up this upcoming week, the coach of the United States made a comment about Kobe Bryant,
Of course.
and in NBA America Sports, how in America we pay for what you have done, not what you're going to do.
Most often, yes.
And he thinks that's ludicrous that in America sports, football, baseball, basketball, across the board, that we pay based on what you did, not what you have to, like what you have
Most
left in the tank.
recent case
Brett Favre?
would be Kobe Bryant. No, Brett Favre deserved every dime he got.
Even the very last year with the Vikings?
You know what? Yeah, because he was coming off of a fantastic performance.
The injury and
he had
NFC.
the potential. He had
The bounty gate.
Well, there was no reason to believe he couldn't do it again.
True.
So I'd say Kobe Bryant being the most recent one. Albert Pujols, another person who
Yep.
we're going to pay you for being one of the best players of our time period. And guess what? Ever think the fact he's going over the hill? A-Rod, he's still got that gigantic contract for a couple more years.
Well, and I mean, looking at it,
or they were, but yeah.
One of the examples I would think football-wide, Denver paid him money, even though he had a great season last year, was you can throw Peyton Manning into that. Paying him because of what he did do in Indianapolis, even though he's getting up there, but Peyton Manning proved us all wrong.
I say, if there was any doubt of what Peyton Manning would do, that contract money should have just been like, well, no, he's Peyton Manning still. Sorry, guys.
And to get into our last topic of the podcast, the NFL draft, arguably, besides maybe the Super Bowl, it bigger than, let's say, Game 1 of the NHL Finals. The
Proven.
Stanley Cup Finals.
Proven.
Around 4 million viewers for Rangers
4.3 million?
4.3 around there for Rangers Kings Game 1. 12.4 million viewers for night one of the NFL draft. And the draft is on the move. The Radio
Thank
City,
God.
They're saying they're all booked up with Madison Square Garden. They're saying, well, you know what? We could have it, but the Knicks could be in the playoffs. The Rangers will probably be in the playoffs in late April. I mean, there's the Barclays Center, home of the Nets, but Nets are probably going to be in the playoffs. First round, we don't know because it's going to be a different team.
Those washed up guys out there.
But it's time the NFL draft. They're thinking about moving. And some of the cities off the top of the head that they mentioned, Chicago.
Yep.
Dallas. L.A. Those are, to me, the top three
Pretty big
heavy
three.
hitters because L.A., their mayor's already come out and said would love to have the draft in L.A. because they even want a football team.
Well, yeah, they're probably 5 years.
Dallas would
less.
be. I think Dallas is just in it because
Jerry World.
And then of course you have Chicago, which to me Chicago seems like we try to bid for so many things, like when we tried to bid for the Olympics, and then we just miss out.
Oprah versus some less ethical women, I believe, was the conversation going on in that case.
But I'm going to start it with you. Where do you think the draft should be if it's not in New York? Because there still is a small chance it stays in New York, but it's likely moving.
Well, before I give my answer on where it should be, I'm a bit surprised it's taken this long. The NFL always seems to be the innovating league. They're the ones who are trying to keep up with modern times, modern technology. They're making smart moves as a business. Obviously, they're the largest business of sports that we have these days. I'm a bit surprised. They're not stoked in history like baseball is. They're not tradition. So why has this been in New York for this whole time? It feels like they've been missing on opportunities to have this thing shipped around and gather more fan support, pull in different communities.
Well, I see what you're going with, but I'm looking at it and I'm just like, since we've been football fans, it's always been, you think of the NFL draft, Radio City.
Yeah.
That's what you think of. And to me, it's like, great. If you can brand, like, New York City to me is, even though I live in Chicago, it's a mecca. I think Chicago's better than New York, but obviously because I'm from here. Yeah. But to everyone else around the country, it's you want to go to New York City at least once in your life. And the complete list of NFL draft destinations, of course, like I said, Los Angeles, New York City, Chicago. But other than that, Dallas, Houston, Nashville, Pittsburgh, Philly, and Boston. Yeah. And the decision, everyone's going to get their information into the NFL by the middle of this month, and then the NFL is going to make a decision by the end of June.
I feel like LA and Jerry World definitely lead it. I'd love if it was in Chicago. I would be there in a heartbeat. I would get my tickets.
We've had this conversation at dinner, but let's have it here on the podcast. Let's say it was in Chicago. Chicago won it. Where could we have it? Because to me, Chicago doesn't have that place like Radio City. It would have to be like a UC, like they would have it at Madison Square.
You could do it at the UC. You could do it. April's a bit chilly to do out in
Soldier Field.
That would be a bit rough. Yeah, I mean, there's theaters in Chicago, but it depends on what kind of atmosphere they want to go for. Mm-hmm. That's why I feel like, okay, Jerry World would be amazing. The sheer size of the place, the gigantic scoreboards. You could have so many people crammed in there. I'm just thinking that would be a party. That would be a week-long
Well, and
festival
plus
of
Jerry
football.
Jones can throw money.
Well,
He can throw money down.
No one can throw more money down than Jerry Jones.
But I mean, one of the
LA has the option.
they can do it to the Staples Center. But what if the Kings are in the playoffs?
Yeah, no, but I think it's the whole fact of, okay, now the West Coast has some sexy teams going.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the 49ers. We have the Seahawks out there. We're starting to pull some attraction.
There's
so
only
why not
one
capitalize
concern
on it?
I have about a West Coast draft.
Yep.
The draft,
That
what
time
was it?
zone?
Well, what was it this year? What, 7:30 Eastern time was the start of the draft?
Yeah.
So if you're going to do that,
pretty
you're
late.
either going to have it where you can do one of two things. Have it to where locally in LA it's going to start at 7:30. That means it's a 9:30 Eastern
That's not acceptable.
coast. Or if it's, and I've had this argument with the NHL playoffs. If you have a 7:30 Eastern time, that's what we're going to keep it as. That means your host city, the draft is starting at 5:30.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm sorry.
So you're taking off Friday if you're going to go to the draft. That you're taking off work that
I
day.
think West Coast fans are used to it.
True. I mean, they've had to deal with.
But I think
football.
it's kind of a cool perk. I mean, come on, you get okay. The only problem with West Coast football was, if you're going to church in the morning on Sunday,
That's what I was
that early
getting
game.
towards.
But other than that, I mean, you go out to a baseball game. Guess what? Most of them are early for the national wide broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
So you get out of there. It's still light out. You can go out have a night out in the town. With this draft starting at 5:30, you would be done by like 8:30. You could still go out and do stuff afterwards. That'd be great.
See, and the one thing that I know you said for Chicago is that late April, it's still a little chilly. It's chilly in New York too, so I feel like that can't
The
be a
temperature's
huge
not.
knock.
Yeah.
But I would love to have it in Chicago, and the one place that non-Chicagoans might not be aware of, and I was waiting for you to throw it out, but you didn't. The Donald Stevenson Convention Center. You can have it there.
That's true. If we want to go based on size of a venue, that place can open up.
Because the way I think of it, and I'm thinking about it in my mind, because I've been there for the big educator convention that they have every year. You can have that showroom, that main showroom where they have all the booths set up. Just clear that out, set up a stage, chairs, and you could have a huge draft event in that room. You can have tables set up for teams. There is enough room there to do it in Chicago.
Absolutely. I mean, we get the chance. We'll find you somewhere to host it in Chicago.
Mean, there are sights to see in Chicago. It's not in all these cities.
I guess that's the only thing.
In Boston,
I wouldn't want to go. No offense to you, Pittsburgh, but you're not a sexy town to go to.
I would go to Philly over Pittsburgh.
I would go to Philly. I'd go to Boston, but I feel like moving to Boston or Philly, it's not far enough. I feel like you want to just spread yourself out. Honestly, the one thing I'm surprised we haven't heard?
Houston?
No, London.
Someone said it.
Roger Goodell and his man crush on London.
I was reading some of the comments on ESPN.
It'd be like a slap in the face to football. But if you were going to kick off a franchise in London, that would be the perfect way to start their season. Guess what, guys? You're going to get a franchise, and we're going to pull everybody over there, all of the media, all the new guys coming into the league, and you're going to get to host it right there.
The comment that I just found it on the ESPN article from the Facebook fans down below. Yep. I'm surprised London isn't in the mix since Goodell gets a hard-on about the NFL.
I wouldn't
in
use
London.
that term, but
that was the exact comment.
Yeah.
And, I mean, yeah, but who's going to, I know that London fans love football, and we have a big showing in the NFL over there. But think about the draftees. If you're a draftee going to the draft, are you going to be like, great, now I got to get on a plane ride to London?
Yeah, it might not be the best thing for them. But you know what? It's a cultural experience.
You know,
get to share, our thing with the entire European, I don't want to say, but yeah, I mean, it's all about spraying the NFL brand, and I think that would be the strongest message if he were to get, like I said, it'd have to be a pairing of you're getting a franchise, and to kick it off, here you go.
You know what's one city I'm surprised we haven't heard anything about?
Sure.
Miami.
Ooh.
I know that you can't use the, airline arenas where the Heat play?
Right.
You can't use that arena because
of course the Heat
more
are in
than
the
likely
playoffs.
they're going to be in the finals.
Oh, of course they will.
But
it's the Heat.
I'm surprised that Miami, just the whole city, with how much they've liked to get their name out there now since they have LeBron, they have the Heat.
But they don't have that football. What do you got?
You got
Mrs. Tannehill? That's about
Or
it.
what about New Orleans? Narlands.
Nolans?
Oh, could you imagine a draft? You go to the draft. You get to go on Bourbon Street. Oh, that'd be a time of your life down there.
That could be cool.
I know I'm throwing stuff out that takes the draft away from Chicago. What I really want.
I was gonna say, you're making a whole lot of cases for not Chicago here.
But those are just two. Like, I wouldn't want to go to Dallas, to be honest.
Really, I think that'd be fun.
Maybe to go to Jerry World. That's it.
I would say,
like,
you know the party that would ensue in Jerry World.
I look at the other cities. Don't want to go to Houston.
Yeah, not sexy.
I really could care less about Nashville.
Yeah,
unless I'm going to a Hawks Preds game. I mean, Pittsburgh, like you said, whatever. I'd go to Philly or Boston.
I just don't feel like that's fun
But
enough.
I wouldn't
That's
go.
why I think.
I wouldn't go to Philly or Boston over Chicago or L.A.
I think LA would be the spread your options out. Jerry World probably has the best place to do it if you're trying to just go an all-out extravaganza.
Well, and I mean, you said, well, here, have the draft in London. You're getting a new NFL team. I feel like you could do the same for L.A. Have the draft in L.A., even have an expansion team, or, hey, this is a team that we've been talking to secretly. They want to relocate.
Or
Boom,
not
here's
so
your team.
secretly Jacksonville. But
Exactly. Then you could have a boom. Here's your draft. Here's your team. Boom. That team gets to the board. All the LA fans go crazy.
That would that'd
They
be great. I'm imagining that now.
And you could have it to where the rebrand is like they don't release it until the pick.
Yeah, that'd be crazy with the first pick of the draft,
and then they reveal the logo.
Yeah, the Los Angeles.
Yeah, whatever. What would their team name be? They have the Kings, the Lakers, the Clippers. I'm thinking LA. I'm not thinking all of California because there's so many teams.
I was say there's way too many teams in California. I don't know. They got some options though. Better start looking soon because there's a couple teams who could end up moving. But the only downside is Chicago. We have Chris Conte.
We do have Chris Conte. I mean,
just don't...
you might see him on the street and just want to punch him in the face.
Yeah, that's a big deterrent for coming to Chicago at the NFL draft.
But hey, at least you got Chicago-style pizza, which is better than New York style. I don't care what you say.
That deep dish, I mean, I'll tell you what. If people go out for deep dish pizza after, they're not going anywhere. It'd be like, if you serve that, serve
it at the draft.
Yeah, they're like, and with the 13 by pick 13. I guarantee you they wouldn't be able to stand up. They're just like, I'm good here.
I'm good here.
Just bring the jersey and hat over here. We'll take some pictures.
At least you don't have to fold. I hate that. Why do I want pizza if I have to fold it? But very last thing. The NFL is going to make their decision at the end of the month. Right now, we're making our prediction. Where do you think they're going to say the draft is held in 2015?
Jerry World, or they're going to keep it in New York one more year. I wanted Chicago, though.
I'm going ballsy. I'm going to say Chicago.
Oh, man.
I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, then don't say it. If you don't think it's going to happen, don't say
LA.
it.
Then I'm going LA.
Realistically,
LA.
Thank you.
This is the thing I think about Chicago, and maybe it's because we're from Chicago. I feel like Chicago tries to get these big events, and then they go,
short.
No, we don't want.
I'll be honest, I'm kind of glad we didn't get the Olympics.
Oh, I was so happy we didn't get the Olympics.
You see what happens to those towns afterwards. It's like nobody uses these venues.
Big stadiums, and then they just rip them down.
No, they don't rip them down. That's the problem. They're just there.
And they're vacant?
You seen like Athens?
No.
Oh my God.
I thought didn't they tear down the one in Beijing, the bird's nest?
They've torn down parts of them, but there's still like leftover like bobsled runs in
isn't it
Eastern Europe.
Isn't it the same thing for cities that go for the World Cup?
World Cup less so because you don't.
Because don't they have to have multiple soccer stadiums for
right? But a lot of the times, they're all in the area, so
True.
It's not as much, and those stadiums can be repurposed.
Mm-hmm.
You can't repurpose a bobsled run.
Yeah, true.
It's not so easy to do that.
So, Dave, you're saying Dallas, but
I'm thinking Dallas, but Chicago.
And I'm gonna say L.A., but I'd love to have it here in Chicago. That's gonna do it here for the Onside Kick this week. Tell us what you think down below about anything we talked about. Kaepernick, Graham, and Vernon Davis. Where do you think the 2015 NFL draft's gonna be? Hit the subscribe button, the like button. Hit us up on Facebook, on Twitter at MVP Sports Real, and as always, have a good day, everybody.